Let's just go. Let's just do it. Ready?
Ready.
Everyone good?
Ready.
Sweet. Yeah, the speech guys back for fake speeches. And it's Matt's turn.
Knocked up. What do we got?
All right. So for fake speeches, I almost hesitate to call this a fake speech because I don't know. It's pretty epic.
It might be the greatest of fake speeches, though. Like,
it very well could be.
because when I first read it, I was like, "Is that fake?" No, but it is not real.
Yeah. No, it was not first uttered by a real person, rather by a fictional character. But it is the Band of Brothers speech in, I believe, Act 4 of Henry V by Shakespeare, the Shakespearean play. So joining me in this this journey through Shakespeare, I have Mike Westmoreland Schaefer.
Great to be here. Great to be here, Pat.
I've got Landon Exeter Free.
Who's Exeter?
I don't know. And Ross Gloucester Johnson.
Okay, I'll take it. I'm here.
All right. So Shakespeare is a pretty important figure in literary history in the Western tradition of literature. He is said to be probably the most influential storyteller, perhaps outside the Bible, in our culture. And I just thought that this speech in particular was I think this speech in particular is a very approachable one. It reads like a motivational, not like a halftime speech. That's like too cheesy. Like this is like a really pretty epic pump up speech. So I think that's probably one of the more approachable speeches or soliloquies, if you will, from Shakespeare. So
Are you gonna read it?
should I? Dang.
I think you have to, don't you?
I guess so.
How's your iambic pentameter? Can you nail the syllables and the ups and the downs?
Well, I was stretching out my iambic pentameter earlier today, and so I think we're good.
It's a muscle and a dialect?
And I'm sitting, so I don't need to. No, that was. All right. All right, let's roll. What's he that wishes so, my cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin. If we marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. By Jove, I am not covetous for gold, nor care I who doth feed upon my cost. It yearns me not if men my garments wear, such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive. No, faith, my cause, wish not a man from England. God's peace I would not lose so great an honor, as one man more methinks would share from me. For the best hope I have, oh, do not wish one more. Rather proclaim it, Westmoreland, through my host, that he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. His passport shall be made, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company, that fears his fellowship to die with us. This day is called the Feast of Saint Crispin. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispin. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast of his neighbors, and tomorrow is Saint Crispin. Then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars, and say, "This wound I had on Crispin's day." Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot. But he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names, familiar in his mouth as household words, Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, aka Ross, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispian shall ne'er go by. From this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, be he ne'er so vile. This day shall gentle his condition, and gentlemen in England, now abed, shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon Saint Crispin's day.
Cool. That was a load, Matt. Thank you.
Dang.
Thanks for going for it, Matt.
Yeah, that was pretty rough. You should watch the YouTube video that we'll put in the show notes because he nailed it.
Hey, it takes guts to read Shakespeare out loud like that. You did it.
Hey, Matt, do you think we should set ourselves up for some context here? I'm sure our fans are just on the edge of their seats to figure out, we're on a roller coaster. They want to know where the roller coaster started. They want to know what theme park we're at.
For sure.
Or like, why? Why did you choose this?
Well, I'll do both. So, why did I choose it? So I literally remember this exact speech from high school. So we read Henry V, and like most Shakespeare, me and my classmates kind of like grunted through it, like weren't super into it. He's notoriously difficult to understand. But I just remembered reading this speech, even before like the teacher kind of explained things, and just being like, whoa, like what just hit me? Like just in several of the lines that are just, the Band of Brothers line, like things like that have like, yeah, just like really, really stuck out. But in terms of where we're at, so the dialogue that happened right before this speech from King Henry V. So this is King Henry V speaking to his troops. They're basically surveying the battlefield. They're surveying the enemy, and they find themselves like grossly outnumbered. And not only grossly outnumbered, but they're already exhausted from other battles and from marching, traveling, and the other army is very fresh. So basically, huge underdogs, not expected at all to win this fight. Henry VIII can tell his men are losing heart, and that's when he delivers this rousing speech. And yeah, I just think it speaks a lot to just a lot of things that men really like, I think need to hear, just a call to courage, a call to brotherhood, a call to take risks and do something good for your posterity and for the rest of the world. And yeah, so.
Is it the original war pep talk speech?
First
documented one?
I imagine there's probably something good in like the Odyssey or the Iliad, one of those two.
True.
I don't recall any from those, but like I imagine there's probably something like that.
Yeah.
So, I think that's an important and constructive way to sort of think about it in a meaningful context, Landon. That's sort of how I characterized it, because Homer or, the Iliad or the Odyssey, whatever it is, right? The Western world, people didn't necessarily have the same sort of cultural contact with those documents the way they did with Shakespeare, right? At least the way I'm thinking about it, Shakespeare has a little bit more of a particular place in the continuity of the Western world as we know it. And, in order to sort of appreciate the speech in a more compelling way than I did in high school, because I'll be honest, the speech, it tested me a little bit. It pushed me. Like I was saying earlier, I found myself falling asleep as I was reading various Wikipedia pages pertaining to the speech and related topics. But, I sort of put myself in the place of the people whom King Henry is speaking to, right? Because that is not so different than the audience that was, reading the speech, right? King Henry's audience is hypothetically 1415, the Battle of Agincourt, whereas this text was written in 1600, right? So it's virtually the same audience as far as we're concerned in terms of the kinds of lives they were living. What kind of lives were they living? What do you guys think?
Are we talking the people in Shakespeare's time or the people in King Henry's?
Well, one and the same. I mean, right? I mean, we're not talking about iPods versus iPads. We're talking about 10 cows in their backyard versus 9 cows.
Not a lot of change in the 200.
These are mere peasants.
Exactly. Yeah, there's just not a whole lot going on. And I think we sort of there is not Avengers 1, 2, 3 for people to look forward to. As Matt said earlier, Shakespeare, most influential storyteller outside of the Bible. Okay, so, people are getting their stories from the Bible. That's sort of their entertainment outside of who's kissing who in the local village, right? And so, Landon sort of said, is this the original motivational speech? I think in many ways it is. It is people being able to be pulled out of the daily humdrum in a way that, the scriptures could not necessarily do for them. They're kind of traditional. Their small village couldn't do for them. It probably plugged into someone's heart in a way that had just never been sort of hit before. And so I think that's the sort of attitude that we need to bring to sort of understanding this speech. And probably none of our literature teachers kind of did a good job of setting that context for. So, Matt, you mentioned something about your memories with this speech in high school. Do any of you guys remember this speech or play or just like your interactions with Shakespeare in general?
The speech, I can't say that I remember, to be totally honest. I think like pretty much everyone else, we did in high school English class, we covered some Shakespeare. So whether that was, I think I remember reading Hamlet, Macbeth, we watched the movies, all that stuff. So a pretty basic, very surface level reading of Shakespeare. I probably didn't understand very much of it. But yeah, the speech itself, I actually don't remember. Reading through it now, I mean, some of it does sound familiar, but I don't know if I've read it before or just if it's been quoted in other places.
Yeah, so I actually used to quote part of this speech sort of unknowingly to my cross country team. So before cross country meets, we would do these things called strides. Okay, once you're all warmed up, you're at the starting line, you kind of do a few 50-yard run outs, as if the race is starting. And after our last run out, the team would huddle up and I, as the captain, would kind of run through some things. Guys, look out for this on the course. Why we're here, et cetera, et cetera. And then it would be King's quote. King was me. That was my nickname. And I'd share my quote for that race. And one of the quotes that I shared was from King Henry VIII, and it was this segment. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, for he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Yeah, we probably did run a little more awesome than usual that particular day. So that's one particular interaction I had in high school with this. To answer my own question, like my interactions with Shakespeare in general, there's really nothing that stands out about it except watching the Romeo and Juliet film from like the 1970s. I don't know if you guys watched that one. It's got actually a great musical score and a really pretty Juliet.
So there's that one plus the Leonardo DiCaprio one. Did you ever see that one?
We did not watch that one because that one, of course, was not as faithful to the script.
All the language was the same. It was just set in modern day LA.
Yeah, it's literally word for word Shakespeare, but so it's as faithful as it can get. But
do you bite your tongue at me?
You had
no, but I do bite my tongue.
I hope you guys, I don't know, take it too much of a different route, but I'm just when Mike was talking there, and actually when Matt was speaking too, something kind of jumped out at me is, so Mike, you kind of framed it as, there was not going on. It was kind of maybe boring, didn't have a lot to look at, and then yet so Shakespeare is able to speak to those people. But yet, I mean, Shakespeare was, I mean, popular. I mean, London was a major city in that time period, and even today, like he speaks to. I think that's an interesting thing about Shakespeare. Not that I'm an expert, but just kind of looking into his life a little bit, prepping for the podcast. He seems to be pretty known for, like Matt said, difficult to understand, but has a can have a wide range. So, right, Matt was said in his pretty opening segment there, like it kind of this speech speaks to men and what it means to be a man. And yet I'm thinking, but then Romeo and Juliet might speak to a 16-year-old girl in a very different way. So he kind of has an ability to tap into a lot of different feelings, emotions, experiences, and then reading about some stuff, he seems to have a very wide range of interpretations. So people argue about what did he mean, and you have people of very differing beliefs arguing strongly for this, is what Shakespeare is trying to say, even though very little is known about his actual, like himself and what he maybe actually was trying to put into it. It's all interpretations, but for some reason, maybe it's just that complex. There isn't the people. It seems like there hasn't been able to be a consensus to really pin down what he was trying to say in different areas, I guess, if that makes sense. So, Mike, you were, like you said, the village 1500s, not a lot going on, and yet I feel like, right, you can make his plays work in modern day LA with Leonardo DiCaprio and still speak to a very wide audience, and that's just, to me, that's just an interesting thing that he's able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there in terms of, because, reading his Wikipedia page, exactly right. People argue about, oh, this was, he was against religion, he was for religion, or he was gay, or he was straight, all these different layers to him they're trying to make a case for. But he sort of, transcends is not quite the right word, but yeah, you can't quite pin him down. And think of some modern storytellers like, I don't know, Christopher Nolan or something like that, or the guy I referenced the film Vice, the biopic on Dick Cheney recently, where there's complexity to that film and Christopher Nolan films, where it's not like people go see Christopher Nolan or Vice type films to see a consistent point of view. They go because they don't necessarily know what to expect. And I think that Shakespeare is sort of the first storyteller to sort of set that tone, right? I mean, Augustine, Plato, they were obviously big storytellers in a sense in the Western world, but they're not exactly introducing the same kind of complexity that Shakespeare is.
Love me some Chris Nolan films. Do not subscribe to the Shakespearean level comparison. Just want to put that. It's good. It's not like,
Okay. So why not?
what, he's got 4 or 5 great films. I mean, Shakespeare has 40 stage level productions of varying size that have lasted 500 years. I don't think Chris Nolan's there.
Oh, you're saying Shakespeare is above Chris Nolan. Okay.
For sure. I mean, I think one aspect of it, like, I've often heard that, just his ability to write pretty complex stories, hitting all the usual topics, and it wasn't the Bible. I mean, he basically pinned down the English language, and at least made a consistent way to reference feelings, emotions, etc. for perhaps an entire people.
Yeah. Oh man, one of us should pull up some of the sayings that come from Shakespeare himself. I was thrown off by some of these. Gosh darn, I should have written some of them down. But yeah, he nailed down the English language. Man, I was reading his epitaph on his tombstone that was written in what people called English back then. It was some sort of crazy gibberish. that I don't think, if you just plop that text down in front of us, you would not be able to read. Maybe our producer can pull that up for us here. But yeah, nailed down the English language. That is true. He was known for that.
All right. I
So
just pulled it up.
Wait. What'd you pull up?
Sayings from Shakespeare. Number one is
Dang it,
actually great.
I
You
just
got
did
it?
that. Well, which we might have different lists. You go first. We'll alternate.
All right. I've got Wild Goose Chase.
I think we have the same list. Dang it.
Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 4. Wild Goose Chase. I love that one.
Yeah, never would have thought that was Shakespeare. The second one is Green-Eyed Monster, which I've never heard that phrase.
No.
I guess that's like has to do with jealousy. So like green, green with jealousy, like, or green with envy. Like I've heard that phrase for sure, but
Yeah.
interesting.
Love is Blind, The Merchant of Venice. Never even heard of The Merchant of Venice.
That one, I hated that play. I remember reading that and being bored.
We only really studied Midsummer Night's Dream, Romeo and Juliet, and Hamlet. I didn't hit a lot of maybe, Julius Caesar was probably the most popular one.
So here's kind of an interesting thought, I guess. I don't know, we're diving into this, not too into the conspiracy theories, but so somebody posed the question at one point, like, is he overrated? And I mean, just if you look anything up on Shakespeare, it pretty commonly comes up. He's the greatest writer in the English language and with like one of the greatest storytellers ever, like we said. So, I mean, you really can't rate him any higher. So it's about as highly praised as could be. And yet there's even speculation over if he authored a lot of these plays and writings. I don't know if you guys had read about that at all, but I just kind of found that interesting that on one hand, we hold him up as the greatest writer in the English language, and on the other hand, people question if he wrote these things at all.
I have heard that a lot, but I couldn't say a second and third line about it. Was it just was the theory that it was like a group of people who co-wrote under the same name or something?
That's kind of the theory, and I don't recall a lot of details about it. From what I remember is that, well, I mean, just one of the main arguments is that just the sheer volume of stuff he produced was like almost impossible. I remember seeing some crazy breakdown just if he would, just in terms of the number of words he wrote, like he would basically have to be writing like 1,000 words a day for like 40 years consecutive, or some kind of like crazy thing like that. Just like the sheer volume seems impossible. But like, again, is this like a bunch of his understudies writing, like half of his sonnets, and like the things that aren't like the huge legendary Shakespeare works, and he's writing all the big stuff? Like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like anyone who's that important is going to have some controversy, right? Like, so the Bible is like the most criticized book in the world. Half the people who are serious about criticizing the Bible, like, yeah, Moses didn't exist, and like all this other stuff. Like, there's a lot of ways you can critique that sort of stuff. So, I mean, did he write literally every single word that's ever been ascribed to him? Probably not. But I don't know. It seems too important of a figure to have survived that much scrutiny.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a useful reference or comparison between him and the scriptures, just in the sense that there is this mystery to him, right? There is all this just unknown to him. And when you group together mystery and unknown with someone who's claiming to have such a major footprint in world history, world events, just like scripture, then it gets people talking and interested and stuff like that. We've talked a lot here about the significance of the speech here, but do you guys know anything about the I've mentioned this is the Battle of Agincourt here. Why did the guys need this motivational speech at Agincourt? Do you guys find anything on that?
No, I would appreciate context. Is Henry V a real person? Was this a real battle? It was more of like a myth. Where are we at on that spectrum?
Yeah, this as I said, takes place in the Battle of Agincourt within the broader context of the Hundred Years' War. And for those of you guys who were still sleeping from the Shakespeare portion of class during your English history lessons later on in the day, Hundred Years' War was basically this tit for tat sort of stuff going on between England and France as each one kind of fought the other for more and more land control over roughly 100 years, right?
Was there boats involved? 'Cause
Maybe
those aren't the same land masses.
that's an excellent point, which did cross my mind in the course of my research, but there's only so much research that can be done over 4 hours, Landon.
Like
I mean, I don't.
I know England and France kind of like they're always at each other's throats, but if we're like 1400s year, were they doing 50 miles back and forth across the channel?
They must have. Maybe we can get our producers on that. Hey Steve, can you look that up for us? Thanks. We'll check back in with Steve later. Battle at Agincourt. The specific context for this kerfuffle is King Henry claimed rightful inheritance to the French throne because he claimed to be a descendant of one of the French royalty, I believe. And again, Steve, you can check me out on this. But that was basically the impetus for the whole battle and the associated battles, is that he claimed to get a right to the French throne. All right. The scale that was going on here once everyone got their stuff together, French 15,000. English, 8,500. Okay, now before you think, okay, 1 against 2, not great odds, it doesn't end there. That's sort of an inflated number. 70, let me hear, 77,000, yeah, 7,000 of those 8,500 were not even like your hand-to-hand combat soldiers. They were like your bow and arrow guys in the background, right? They were the elves from Lord of the Rings. So in hand-to-hand combat, we're talking 1,500 against 15,000, 10-1. That's like pitting 1993 Chicago Bulls against 1989 Boston Celtics, giving the Celtics 4 of your starting players, giving 1 of your 6th men. You only have 1 6th man, so giving your 6th man to Boston, and there's Michael Jordan versus 10 Boston Celtic players and winning. That was the Battle of Agincourt for you.
To our Lord of the Rings fans, yes, Mike's use of elves was incorrect. To our basketball fans, I'm not sure that that's right.
Okay,
Sorry, we could have go with a more modern reference than obscure 80s.
We get what you're selling. 10-1.
Old Larry Bird versus young Michael.
Plus 9 other Boston Celtics players. It was 10-1. 10-1 is the bottom line here that I want you guys to take away here. So
he's a runner. So.
All right. So they needed the pump up speech. How did it work? What happened after that?
Well, they obviously won. I mean, that's all you need to know. The play itself, the final act 5, ends up taking place a few years later, actually. And, everyone just kind of gets along well. I believe the term coined by the French queen is, let's have French English people, like the same way we have Italian Americans, African Americans. She kind of coined the term French English people in the play. So that's sort of the epilogue for our fans. The spoiler. Put a spoilers alert on this episode, Steve, please.
So I think we all really like the Band of Brothers line, right? The we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. Are there any other lines that really stuck out as like just a cool thought or something that really got you going or really got you pumped up?
So what I put down here, guys, as this was right on the homework. This was a question right off the homework. Um yeah, I think one of the elegant things that Shakespeare does here is he puts a really positive spin on something that's not easy to put a positive spin on, right? I mean, he's expecting, or King Henry's expecting a large number of casualties. And rather than, just calling it like he sees it, like, oh gosh, a lot of people are going to die here. He uses the word, or he articulates the idea that there will be more honor for those who survive. So that was one thing that sort of struck me in a particular way.
I guess I guess I'm trying to read it, but it's not just one line, but the kind of just this section where he talks about this day is called the Feast of Crispin, and he that outlives this day and comes safe home. So kind of like Mike was saying, just the fact that, you know, if you make it out, and that's not an expectation necessarily, but still to go and fight, and I don't know, to kind of jump away from just the line, but just thinking too, I would wonder, I guess, culturally, how much, if you lived in a time where it was maybe more common for men to have to go to war, see combat, fight, possibly die, or to people of our generation, I mean, that's, I mean, like, a relatively unthought of thing right now, at least like today. You know what I mean? Like that I would have to I would have to serve my country and go to war and fight and could die at any given time seems like it's just a very foreign idea to me, at least, I guess. But anyway, so again, to answer your question, that line about the section about uh, those who see old age.
I like that section too, particularly the line, "Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot. But he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day." Just old men forget, like, we're all going to forget things. All of us will be forgotten at some point. But none of that matters because you'll know, like, what deep down in your heart, like, what you did this day, like, what you did when it really freaking mattered. Um, Man, that's just like, and it's such, I think it almost contradicts what he says about honor, right? So he's all about like, oh yeah, let's get honor. I want honor. But then it's like, at the end of even, yeah, just at the end of the day, like no one's going to remember Bob from the Battle of Agincourt, but like you will remember and you will like rest well, like you will have this kind of deep, profound satisfaction in your heart from your feats. And I don't know. I think that's something that gets lost, certainly in our culture, just with like kind of the demand for attention with, Instagram and whatever, social media stuff. Like we just want attention. We want to be remembered. Um, I think sometimes to the expense of like, you know, like you're going to be forgotten, but like just do the right thing.
I really like the part too, sorry, kind of the end. And gentlemen in England, now abed, shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manholds cheap, whiles any speak that fought with us upon Christmas Day. So I mean, just the way he even frames it, people will be, upset that they couldn't be here with us today. So it's like we have a privilege, not even a duty. Like it's almost approaching it, it makes you kind of frame it like that, and yeah, it kind of makes you want to be there with them a little bit.
Which I think you see in the Iliad. I fought with Achilles, like that exists in Achilles. I fought with Achilles, and being a part of the war. And then the first time I read the speech, one time through, I just immediately thought of Patton and D-Day, like a very similar. Here's what we're about to do, boys. Like, be brave. You'll be remembered. Like, we're destined for this. Let's go. Which was a real speech versus perhaps the Iliad and Achilles. To contrast one point Matt said, I think, if you're 1300s, 1400s, every generation up until the last couple, like you were a farmer, a laborer, or part of the landed gentry and a lord or a king. And there really wasn't much in between other than like being a part of a battle or a war and, being able to pass on to your family, like he fought an X thing against this cause and was a warrior. It was kind of like soldiers, warriors fighting in a war was the middle class up until the 1900s. And being able to perhaps do the most significant thing with your life without starting a business or money or beyond family was like just this war ethos that you see pop up certainly in this speech, and in kind of man's never ending quest to conquer the land just over the hills.
Do you guys have any Saint Crispin's days that you either missed out on or you were proudly there?
Metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically speaking. You guys would have all went home when King Henry said, "You got your passport."
Maybe maybe not quite the same in terms of like, the odds being so drastically stacked against us, but I remember this was like a truly unforgettable event in high school. So like I played football, and we had a coach who he had stopped coaching kind of halfway through the prior season because he was diagnosed with cancer and it was starting to get serious, and he just had to stop doing it. So I knew the guy a little bit. The guys who are a year older than me knew this coach very, very well. We had gotten word earlier that week that he had kind of taken a turn and wasn't doing well, and we found out, or the coach basically told us before the game that Friday night, that he had passed away earlier that day. And basically like said that we're playing this game to honor him. Coach Schlegel was his name. And just the emotion that we played with, just the way our team came together, everything was so 10 times more intense than a normal Friday night football game. And we murdered. Like this was like our rival in the conference. They were like the next best team, and we freaking murdered them. Like wasn't even close. And I've never had an experience before or since where like people were just so motivated and so like unified and to do something together. Like I think that was probably the closest thing to something like that powerful and motivating, where like you just came together and just got stuff done.
Yeah, not quite maybe as dramatic as that, at least in the moment, but took me a second, but then I was kind of thinking about it a little bit. So my wife now, when I asked her on our first date, there was a lot of reasons at the time why I probably shouldn't have asked her out. So again, not that the odds were stacked against me, but there's lots of reasons to kind of say no. And one person in particular, not that they gave me a long prep speech, but gave me a small kind of a little push speech. So I guess that was my going for it against the odds a little bit, if you will. Worked out well, obviously.
My St. Crispin's Day, though, I'll throw out there. Maybe we'll leave in the extended edition of this episode, available when you subscribe. Man, when
For our one subscriber, Craig from Missouri.
Yeah. Thanks for throwing that in there. Yeah, it was probably during Biking for Babies. For those who don't know, Biking for Babies, a nonprofit bicycle ride that started to fundraise money for pregnancy resource centers. Basically a 1,000-mile bicycle trip in a week every summer for several years. And there was one particular year that was very trying. I remember we were coming into Memphis, or leaving Memphis, actually. Memphis was always a significant stop because it meant you were about halfway So you had about 500 miles under your belt, and you had 500 miles to go still. In that particular year, we had about 12 cyclists, about 5 people in the van. So a lot of where are we going? What time do we have to leave? I'm not ready. I'm so tired. Tired times 1,050. And I just remember leaving Memphis that morning, wishing that I was anywhere but right there. And we ended up getting through that day. But what sort of hung over me for that day was the fact that we'd been doing about 140 miles a day every day, but we had the big day, 180 miles to go from my parents' place in Freeburg, southeast of St. Louis, up to Champaign in one day. And we had to get there by 5 o'clock for Saturday Mass. And there was one friend in particular who just really struggled and made the mileage last even longer. And her name was Brittany. I don't mind putting it out there because, maybe you should edit that out. No, because the way I just phrased it. But anyway, my friend Brittany, I knew was really going to be challenged by this particular day. And we got the first 100 miles under our belt that day. And as we were leaving Effingham, she was starting to kind of lose a few inches on our friend Sarah's tire, which means that, it's just really important when you're bicycling to be on someone's tire and not have to do an ounce of extra work. And, so I came up next to her, knowing that we still had 70 miles to go still. Came up next to her and I said, Brittany, how are you feeling? She's like, fine. I'm like, Brittany, you have 4 hours left and you need to tell yourself something so you don't lose an inch on Sarah's tire. And whatever it is, you tell yourself that. And I'm still astounded by it, but she managed to get through that last 70 miles. And so when we were all able to come through as a team and knowing that we'd had the hardest day behind us, now the last day was a mere 120 miles to Chicago. It was just an extraordinary feeling, coming into Chicago that particular year, knowing that particular experience and then all the other smaller ones were behind us as well. It's really, I remember leaving Chicago that night in the car. I remember kind of tapping my finger on the glass. It was this cool night. And it's just one of these, I call them my big five happiest moments of my life. It's just kind of a category of itself. So that's my Saint Crispin's day, I suppose, or a couple of days there.
I'm pretty sure she fell asleep bawling that night.
All right. One quick quiz here and we'll see how it goes. Shakespeare, a lot of words, a lot of rhymes, a lot of language stories, often referred and compared to rappers, hip hop. 6 lines, you tell me, hip hop or Shakespeare. Ready?
Ooh, I like it.
Rapid fire. Here we go. To destroy the beauty from which one came. To destroy the beauty from which one came.
Rap.
Rap.
I'd definitely say rap.
It is rap, hip hop, Jay-Z.
Okay.
Maybe it's hatred I spew, maybe it's food for the spirit.
Shakespeare.
That's rap.
That is Eminem.
What a genius.
Wow. Oh.
Men would rather use their broken records than their bare hands.
I feel like that's got to be rap because I don't know if broken records was a phrase back then.
Shakespeare, Othello.
Really?
I was not born under a rhyming planet.
That's Shakespeare.
Yeah, Shakespeare.
It is Shakespeare, Much Ado About Nothing. The most benevolent king communicates through your dreams.
Shakespeare.
Rap.
Hip-hop, Wu-Tang Clan.
Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing with. All right.
Finally, Socrates' philosophy and hypotheses can't define me.
Oh, that's for sure rap.
Yeah, that sounds like rap.
Gosh, was that? I know that line.
It is also Wu-Tang Clan.
Oh, yeah, I knew that. Wu-Tang Clan.
That would
It's
have
close.
been.
There's some fixtures in there.
But that is a cool chart that you have with the number of unique words used within the artist's first 35,000 lyrics. That is a really interesting list.
Yeah, that is a great infographic. Although I sort of feel like you're the student who's like, hey, teacher says 3 pages. Well, I'm just gonna put a huge picture here in the notes and make it look like I contributed 1/5 of it.
It was a study done. It was pretty popular around the interwebs a while ago. Rap artists and authors and how sophisticated their words are. Shakespeare's towards the top, but Moby Dick of the old genre is tops right in line with Eminem and just 3 or 4 others. So look it up.
One interesting final thought here. I'd hate to sort of rag on my literature teachers from high school because one in particular stands out. Well, actually, 2 stand out. They were pretty good, but you know, just that fun little game you had there, Landon. Like, gosh, what a great way to sort of bring home just the weight of Shakespeare's language, and the conscious or unconscious inspiration it brings to other storytellers of various mediums. But 2, the speech, like we've been describing here, I mean, it's very motivational, right? But it brings to mind these very important, like, existential questions, that should, if honestly examined, should make you feel a little naked to the world, a little bit vulnerable. And I don't feel like we did that in high school. Speaking on these things like how these truths transcend a decade. There's more to being human than just your Twitter account. Not that there was Twitter when we were in high school. But I really wish we talk more about that when we were in school. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah, I think that was really well said.
what do you guys think? Who's on for next week? 2 weeks. Next
That's
episode.
Shakespeare. I'm up next. We're last part of our big speeches. Going to be about greed and money and economics.
Ooh, dang girl.
New frontiers here, and they're gonna push our limits. What do you guys think? Any final words, final thoughts on Shakespeare?
I wish I had just a little bit more intelligence to really, you know what I mean? Just to like get it, just to pick them up a little easier, because it is like tough to slog through, but I really do think it is important.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard for like novices like us to like, because I mean, if I just pick up Shakespeare, I mean, without some sort of, I feel like it'd be been like, a course or somebody that understands it better to kind of like work you through it. At least for me, it would be difficult to dive deeper. I would like to say, I would like the idea of reading Shakespeare, but I'm probably just not going to do the work to do it.
I think I'm gonna watch the 1989 Henry V film this weekend. I mean, 100% a Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah,
You're a fool not to watch it.
Yeah. I heard it
Yeah,
was
that's
like
up there.
it was somewhat popular, like mainstream. It wasn't perfect, but like it was a very good production. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.